The evening in the restaurant was just like any other, filled with the soft clinking of glasses, murmurs of conversation, and the faint aroma of fresh coffee and baked bread. The lights were dim but warm, casting gentle shadows over the polished wooden tables. In the corner of the room sat a grand piano, its black surface gleaming under the soft light. Most people only noticed it as part of the decor, an elegant piece that added charm to the room, but tonight it would become the center of everything. The waitress moved through the restaurant with quiet efficiency, carrying trays filled with plates of food and drinks. She had been working here for years, always polite and attentive, but never the center of attention. Guests often overlooked her, focused on their meals or their companions, rarely stopping to notice her gentle smile or the way she quietly made sure everyone was comfortable. Yet beneath her calm exterior, there was a part of her that few knew about, a secret she had kept hidden for most of her life. She could play the piano, and she played beautifully. Music was her escape, her private world, a place where she could express herself without words. Tonight, however, her hidden talent was about to be forced into the spotlight in a way she never expected. A man, known for his wealth and arrogance, had entered the restaurant with a smug look and an air of authority. He had been watching her from across the room for a few moments, his eyes sharp and calculating. There was a challenge in his gaze, a sense that he wanted to test her, to see what she could do under pressure. He called her over with a sharp gesture. She approached, her heart beating faster than usual, sensing that something unusual was about to happen. "Play the piano," he said, his voice carrying a mix of command and derision. "Everyone wants to see if you're really as skilled as they say, or if you're just pretending to be humble." She paused for a moment, unsure how to respond. The other diners had started to notice the exchange, their attention shifting to the unfolding scene. Whispers began to ripple through the room as they looked at her, curious about what was going to happen. The pressure was immense. This was not a polite request. It was a challenge designed to humiliate her, to make her stumble in front of everyone. She felt the wave of nervousness, her hands tightening slightly at her sides. What if she failed? What if she made a mistake? The thought of embarrassment made her stomach twist into knots. But alongside the fear, there was a small spark of determination. She knew she could play. She had practiced in secret for years, pouring her emotions into the keys, learning pieces that even some professionals would admire. She could do this. Taking a deep breath, she walked to the piano, each step echoing softly on the polished floor. The man watched her with a smirk, clearly expecting her to falter. The audience, now fully aware of what was happening, leaned forward in their seats. Some were curious, some skeptical, and some clearly amused at what they thought would be a spectacle of failure. She sat down on the piano bench, her fingers hovering over the keys for a brief moment. The restaurant was quiet now, every eye focused on her. She could feel the tension in the room, the anticipation of what was about to unfold. Then, almost instinctively, she began to play. The first notes were soft, tentative, almost like testing the waters. She could feel the keys beneath her fingers, the familiar sensation grounding her. Slowly, the melody began to flow more confidently. It was a gentle piece at first, simple but elegant. She could see the surprise starting to cross the faces of the diners, their eyebrows raising as they realized she was actually playing well. The man's smirk faltered slightly, his eyes narrowing as he tried to anticipate what she would do next. He had thought this would be easy, a way to embarrass her, but already the situation was shifting in an unexpected direction. The waitress closed her eyes for a moment, letting the music take over. Each note carried a piece of her story, a whisper of her years of practice and dedication. She didn't play to impress. She played because she had to. The music was honest and raw, filling the room with a sound that was both delicate and powerful. She felt the energy of the audience, the way the notes seemed to reach them directly, stirring emotions she couldn't have predicted. Some of the diners leaned forward, captivated by the unexpected beauty of the performance. Phones were pulled out, discreetly recording the moment, while others simply sat in awe, unable to speak. The atmosphere shifted from one of anticipation of humiliation to one of genuine admiration. People who had been skeptical now found themselves holding their breath, waiting to see what she would do next. The man, once confident, now looked uneasy. He had underestimated her completely. His plan to embarrass her had backfired before it even began. He shifted in his seat, trying to regain control of the situation, but the music was already taking over. There was a strength and confidence in her playing that demanded attention, and for the first time, everyone saw her not just as a waitress, but as a talented pianist. The piece she was playing grew more intricate, each hand moving with precision and grace. The room seemed to fade around her, leaving only the sound of the piano and the emotions it carried. The audience was silent, enraptured, as they watched her fingers dance over the keys. She had transformed a moment meant for humiliation into a moment of triumph. Every note was a statement. She was not someone to be underestimated. By the time she finished the first part of the piece, there was a stunned silence. The music lingered in the air, leaving a sense of awe that was almost tangible. The audience slowly began to clap, tentative at first, then with growing enthusiasm. People who had come expecting a show of failure were now witnessing a display of undeniable talent. The waitress allowed herself a small smile, a quiet acknowledgement of what she had achieved. She had faced the challenge and turned it into something beautiful. The man who had forced her to play sat back, speechless. He had intended to humiliate her, but instead, he had become a witness to her extraordinary skill. The dynamic in the room had completely shifted. She was no longer just a waitress. She had become the center of attention, the source of admiration and respect. The audience's perception had changed in an instant, and she had proven to herself and everyone around her that talent and courage could triumph over arrogance and mockery. As the applause grew louder, she felt a mixture of relief and exhilaration. The fear that had gripped her moments before was replaced with a sense of empowerment. She had faced an impossible challenge and had risen above it. The music had spoken for her, conveying emotions and skill that words could never capture. In that moment, she realized that her talent was not something to hide. It was a gift, and tonight, it had shone brighter than she could have imagined. Even as the audience continued to clap and cheer, she remained at the piano, letting the final notes linger. She had turned what was meant to be a moment of shame into a moment of triumph. The restaurant, once filled with whispers and skeptical glances, now buzzed with admiration and respect. And though she had faced fear and pressure, she had emerged stronger, more confident, and ready for whatever came next. Tonight had changed everything, and she knew that her life would never be the same again. The room was still buzzing from the first notes that had filled the air. Whispers traveled quickly, and many of the diners had turned to each other, shaking their heads in surprise. No one had expected the quiet waitress to play with such skill and emotion. For a few moments, it felt as though the restaurant had transformed into a concert hall. The warm lighting, the gleaming piano, and the unexpected performer combined to create a magical atmosphere. Despite the applause, she felt her heart still racing. The first part had gone well, but she knew the true challenge was just beginning. The man who had forced her to play now leaned forward, his expression unreadable. He no longer wore the smug look that had dominated his face moments ago. Instead, there was a flicker of curiosity, almost a silent acknowledgement that she was far more capable than he had anticipated. He wanted to see if her talent was real or if the first part had been just a fluke. She could feel all eyes on her again as she prepared to continue. Her fingers hovered over the keys, feeling the cool surface beneath them. Taking a deep breath, she let her hands find their rhythm naturally. This time, she started a more complex melody, one she had practiced countless times in private. Her nerves were still there, but they had been replaced by a determination to show what she could truly do. The music became her voice, speaking louder than words ever could. As the notes flowed, the audience began to lean in closer. They had been surprised by the gentle beauty of the first part, but now they were witnessing real artistry. Every movement of her hands seemed precise yet effortless, as if the piano and her were connected in a way that transcended explanation. The melody carried emotion, telling a story without needing a single word. Some people closed their eyes, letting the sound wash over them, while others stared in awe at her skill. Among the diners, a few people whispered to each other. "Who would have thought?" one said quietly. "She's incredible." Another nodded, eyes wide, as though they couldn't believe what they were hearing. The atmosphere had shifted completely. What had started as a potentially humiliating situation had now turned into a moment of admiration and amazement. She was no longer just a waitress. She was an artist in her own right, commanding attention with every note. Even the man who had forced her to play could no longer hide his astonishment. His initial intention to ridicule her had failed. Instead of faltering, she had risen to the occasion, proving herself under immense pressure. There was no malice in her performance, no need to show off for revenge. She played for herself, for the music, and for the audience that was now captivated by her talent. The irony was not lost on anyone present. The very person who wanted to humiliate her had inadvertently set the stage for her triumph. The waitress allowed herself a brief smile as the music continued. She could feel the connection with the audience growing stronger. Each note seemed to draw them in, creating a shared experience between her and everyone watching. She noticed small details, a couple holding hands, eyes glistening with emotion, a young man recording the performance on his phone, clearly impressed, an older woman nodding along, lost in the melody. The music was creating a bond that transcended social status, age, or expectation. Her confidence began to grow with each passing moment. The complex parts of the piece came naturally, her fingers gliding over the keys as if they had a life of their own. The restaurant seemed to fade around her, leaving only the piano and the music. She had faced fear, doubt, and the expectation of humiliation, yet here she was, creating something beautiful from the very pressure meant to break her. The audience's reaction was not immediate. At first, they listened quietly, unsure how to respond. But as the performance progressed, the silent awe transformed into audible appreciation. Soft claps began to ripple through the room, tentative at first, then growing louder as the beauty of her playing became undeniable. People were leaning forward, fully engaged, unable to pull their eyes away. Conversations had stopped entirely, replaced by a collective focus on the music. In the back of the room, some of the staff watched in amazement. They had known she was talented, but seeing her play in front of a live audience under pressure was something entirely different. Their admiration grew with every note, recognizing not just skill but bravery. She had taken a risk, exposing a part of herself that few had ever seen, and she was shining brighter than anyone could have imagined. The man who had issued the challenge shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His eyes, once filled with certainty and arrogance, now reflected a mixture of disbelief and respect. He had underestimated her completely. He had thought this would be easy, a way to make a spectacle out of her, but instead, he had witnessed something extraordinary. The power of her talent was undeniable, and for the first time, he realized that control had slipped from his hands. The room was hers, not his. As the piece reached its climax, the music became more intense, weaving intricate patterns that filled every corner of the restaurant. Each chord resonated with emotion, expressing a depth that words could never capture. The audience was completely absorbed, some leaning on the table, eyes closed, letting the sound carry them away. The waitress felt a surge of energy as she played, a mix of joy and relief, knowing that she had transformed a moment of potential embarrassment into one of triumph. When the final notes echoed through the room, there was a pause, a collective breath held by everyone present. The silence was powerful, as if no one could quite believe what they had just witnessed. Then, slowly, the applause began, soft at first, then growing into a wave of clapping, cheering, and whistling. The audience rose to their feet, some clapping wildly, some wiping away tears, all showing genuine admiration. The energy in the room was electric, charged with excitement and awe. She sat at the piano for a moment, letting the final sound fade into the air. Her hands rested lightly on the keys, a quiet acknowledgement of the accomplishment she had achieved. The fear that had gripped her earlier was gone, replaced by a sense of empowerment and confidence. She had faced an impossible challenge and had emerged stronger, proving to herself and everyone around her that talent and courage could overcome mockery and doubt. People began to approach her, offering compliments, expressing their astonishment, and asking how long she had been playing. Each interaction reinforced the reality that her hidden talent was now recognized, celebrated, and admired. The experience had changed the perception of everyone present. She was no longer just a waitress carrying trays of food. She was a musician, an artist, and someone who had faced fear with grace and skill. The man who had forced her to play finally spoke, though his voice was quieter than before. There was no trace of mockery, only a reluctant acknowledgement of her talent. The dynamic had shifted completely. What had started as a potential humiliation had turned into a display of resilience and brilliance. He realized that he could not diminish her. Instead, he had inadvertently given her the stage to shine. As the evening continued, the restaurant was filled with conversation again, but now it revolved around her performance. The energy had changed, becoming more lively, more appreciative, and more celebratory. People were sharing their excitement, replaying the experience in their minds, and expressing admiration for the unexpected display of talent. She moved through the restaurant with a quiet pride, acknowledging smiles and compliments, feeling a sense of belonging and respect that had been absent before. For the waitress, this night was more than just a performance. It was a turning point, a moment when courage, talent, and perseverance combined to create something unforgettable. She had faced fear, pressure, and doubt, and in doing so, she had revealed a part of herself that would never be hidden again. The music had spoken for her, conveying emotions and skill that words could never capture. It had connected her to the audience, inspired admiration, and changed perceptions. As she left the piano for a brief break, she allowed herself a moment to reflect. She realized that talent is not just about skill. It is also about bravery, about stepping forward when the world expects you to fall. She had turned an attempt at humiliation into a celebration of her abilities, showing that courage and dedication could overcome even the most challenging circumstances. The night had been unexpected, intense, and transformative, leaving her with a sense of accomplishment and a renewed belief in herself. The restaurant had quieted down after the applause, but the energy from the performance lingered in the air like a warm, invisible current. The waitress returned to the piano, feeling a mix of anticipation and nervous excitement. She had already shown the audience her skill, yet she sensed that this was the moment to truly reveal the depth of her talent. The room seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for her next move. She placed her fingers on the keys and closed her eyes for a brief moment, letting the music guide her. The first notes were soft, almost like a whisper, drawing the audience in. This time, she began with a piece that required more technical skill, faster hand movements, and complex transitions. She felt her heart beat in rhythm with the music, each chord a steady pulse of determination and confidence. The audience watched intently, captivated by the transformation unfolding before them. What had started as a simple, elegant melody now evolved into something intricate and powerful. Her hands moved with precision, yet there was a fluidity that made the performance feel effortless. Every note told a story, each chord expressing emotions that words could not convey. People in the room leaned forward, completely absorbed, some unable to hide the awe in their eyes. The man who had tried to humiliate her now sat in silence, his earlier arrogance replaced by disbelief. He had not expected such skill, such command over the piano, and he could feel the power of the performance changing the dynamic of the room. The audience's attention was no longer on him, but fully on the young woman at the piano, and it was a humbling sight. She continued to play, allowing the music to flow naturally, as if she were telling a story only she could hear. The melody rose and fell, building tension and then releasing it in delicate waves. The audience was spellbound, some leaning on the table, eyes closed, feeling the music resonate deep within them. Others sat rigid with amazement, their faces showing disbelief at the unexpected virtuosity of someone they had seen only as a waitress moments ago. Every movement of her fingers was deliberate yet graceful, a perfect combination of control and emotion. The piano keys responded to her touch, producing a sound that seemed to echo through the room, filling every corner with harmony and intensity. The complexity of the piece demanded complete focus, and she gave herself entirely to it, losing awareness of everything except the music and the emotions it carried. She glanced briefly at the audience, seeing the range of reactions. There were people who were moved to tears, others who whispered in astonishment to the person beside them, and some who simply stared, unable to take their eyes off her. The energy in the room had shifted completely from curiosity and doubt to admiration and awe. Her courage and skill had captivated everyone, leaving no room for the skepticism that had been present before. The man who had forced her to play now looked smaller, almost humbled by the unexpected brilliance unfolding before him. He realized that he had underestimated her completely. His plan to embarrass her had failed entirely, and in the process, he had become a silent witness to her triumph. His presence, once intimidating, now seemed irrelevant as the audience focused solely on her performance. The piece she played grew more complex with each passing moment, incorporating rapid scales, intricate fingerwork, and dramatic pauses that heightened the emotional intensity. She felt herself entering a state of flow, where every note seemed to come naturally, and every movement was guided by instinct and passion. The piano became an extension of her, and the room became a canvas for her expression. Audience members were caught in the spell of the performance. Some whispered encouragements to one another, amazed by the skill and confidence of the young woman. Others were too absorbed to speak, simply letting the music wash over them, their emotions stirred in ways they had not expected. The atmosphere was electric, charged with admiration and respect, as the performance reached new heights of technical brilliance and emotional depth. The waitress felt a surge of pride and exhilaration as she played. She had faced fear, pressure, and doubt, and now she was creating something extraordinary. Each note she struck was a statement of resilience, a testament to her talent and determination. She had turned what was meant to be a humiliating moment into a celebration of her abilities, showing everyone present the power of courage and skill. As the music reached its climax, the audience leaned forward collectively, holding their breath, not wanting to miss a single moment. The crescendo built with intensity, the keys echoing her emotions in a powerful symphony. Every chord resonated through the room, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. It was a performance that would be remembered long after the night ended. When the final notes rang out, there was a moment of silence, a pause that felt almost sacred. The music had left an imprint on everyone, a lingering sensation of awe and admiration. Then, slowly, the applause began, growing steadily into cheers and clapping that filled the restaurant with energy. The audience was on its feet, applauding enthusiastically, moved by the unexpected brilliance of the performance. She allowed herself a small, humble smile, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. She had faced the challenge with courage and had shown the audience her true abilities. The fear and doubt that had gripped her earlier had been replaced by a sense of empowerment and pride. She had turned a moment meant for humiliation into one of triumph and inspiration. The man who had challenged her now approached cautiously, his expression a mix of awe and reluctant respect. He had intended to embarrass her, but he had witnessed a display of talent and bravery that he could not deny. The audience, still clapping and cheering, reinforced the reality of her achievement, showing that her performance had left an indelible mark on everyone present. As the applause continued, people began to approach her, offering compliments and expressing their amazement. Some asked how long she had been playing, while others simply shook their heads in wonder. The recognition was overwhelming, yet she accepted it with quiet grace, knowing that the music had spoken for her in a way words never could. The evening continued with a newfound energy. The atmosphere in the restaurant was vibrant and alive, filled with admiration and appreciation for the young woman who had transformed a moment of potential embarrassment into a remarkable performance. She moved through the room with quiet confidence, acknowledging the smiles and praise, feeling a sense of validation and respect that she had never experienced before. For the waitress, this performance was more than just playing the piano. It was a turning point, a moment of courage and self-expression that had changed how she was seen by others and how she saw herself. She had faced fear and pressure and had emerged stronger, proving that talent combined with bravery could overcome any challenge. The night had been transformative, leaving her with a renewed sense of purpose and a deep understanding of the power of resilience, skill, and self-belief. The room was silent except for the soft hum of conversation as the audience processed what they had just witnessed. The waitress returned to the piano, her fingers brushing the keys lightly as she prepared to continue. She had already impressed everyone with her skill, but now she wanted to take them further, to show the full depth of her talent and the emotion she could convey through music. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, letting the memory of the first two parts guide her. The notes she played now were more confident, more powerful, each one flowing naturally into the next. This was the piece she had practiced for years in private, a composition that challenged her technically and emotionally. Every movement of her hands was precise yet fluid, creating a sound that was both beautiful and commanding. The audience watched in awe as the music filled the room. Each note seemed to carry a story, a message that went beyond words. The melody rose and fell, building tension and then releasing it in waves of sound that resonated deep within everyone present. Some diners leaned forward, captivated, while others sat quietly, letting the music wash over them. The atmosphere had shifted completely. What had begun as a moment of potential humiliation had transformed into a showcase of extraordinary talent. The man who had tried to embarrass her now sat quietly, clearly caught off guard. His initial arrogance had disappeared, replaced by a sense of disbelief and grudging admiration. He had expected to see her falter, to witness a failure, but instead, he was witnessing something remarkable. Every note she played seemed to challenge his assumptions, to show him that talent and dedication could not be diminished by mockery or intimidation. As she continued, the piece grew more complex. Rapid scales, intricate harmonies, and dramatic pauses filled the space with emotion. Her fingers moved with a combination of speed and grace, each chord resonating with clarity and intensity. The piano seemed to respond to her every thought, as if it had been waiting for this moment to come alive under her touch. Audience members were spellbound. Some closed their eyes, lost in the music, while others watched her every move, amazed at the skill and confidence she displayed. The applause from the earlier parts had faded into attentive silence, a collective holding of breath as they experienced the performance fully. The energy in the room was palpable, a shared connection between the performer and her audience that transcended words. The waitress felt a surge of emotion as she played. The music was not just a display of technical ability, it was an expression of everything she had worked for, everything she had kept hidden for years. She poured her heart into every note, letting the melody tell her story of resilience, courage, and dedication. The fear and doubt she had felt moments ago were gone, replaced by a sense of freedom and empowerment. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a voice, a means to communicate with everyone in the room. The audience was completely captivated. Some whispered in awe to their companions, unable to believe the level of talent they were witnessing. Others simply stared, their expressions a mix of admiration and amazement. The energy of the performance filled the room, touching everyone present in a way that was both personal and universal. For a few moments, the restaurant was transformed into a concert hall, the audience united by the power of music and the skill of the performer. The man who had challenged her seemed to shrink in comparison to her presence at the piano. His plan to humiliate her had backfired completely, and he could do nothing but watch as she captivated the entire room. He realized that her courage and skill had turned a potentially embarrassing situation into a demonstration of talent and confidence that no one could ignore. His earlier arrogance had no place in this moment, replaced by a reluctant respect for what she had accomplished. The piece reached its climax, the music swelling with intensity and emotion. Every chord struck with precision, every note resonated with feeling. The audience was completely immersed, some leaning on the table, some holding their hands over their hearts, all moved by the power of the performance. The room was filled with a sense of wonder, the kind of awe that comes from witnessing something truly extraordinary. She continued to play, letting the music flow naturally, her fingers dancing across the keys with grace and skill. The complexity of the composition demanded her full attention, and she gave herself entirely to it. Every movement was deliberate, every note purposeful, creating a harmony that captivated the audience completely. She had transformed a moment meant to embarrass her into an unforgettable display of artistry and courage. The audience began to respond subtly at first, soft murmurs of admiration, heads nodding in rhythm with the music. Gradually, their appreciation became more visible, smiles spreading across faces, eyes widening in amazement. The energy in the room built steadily, a wave of admiration and respect that seemed to lift the performance even higher. The waitress felt a sense of connection with her audience, a shared understanding of the beauty and power of the music she was creating. As the final notes approached, the piece became more gentle, more introspective. The intensity softened, giving way to a quiet, lingering melody that left a lasting impression. The audience sat in silence, absorbing the final sounds, letting the experience resonate within them. The music had told a story, evoked emotions, and created a moment that no one would forget. When the last note faded, there was a pause, a moment of stillness as the audience absorbed the performance. Then, slowly, the applause began, tentative at first, then growing louder, more enthusiastic, until the entire room was clapping and cheering. People rose to their feet, some whistling, some calling out words of admiration, all expressing their appreciation for the extraordinary talent they had just witnessed. The waitress sat at the piano, her hands resting lightly on the keys, allowing herself a quiet moment of satisfaction. She had faced fear, pressure, and doubt, and had emerged victorious, turning a potential moment of humiliation into one of triumph and inspiration. The applause and admiration from the audience were a testament to her skill, courage, and determination. The man who had tried to challenge her approached cautiously, his expression a mix of awe and respect. He had underestimated her completely, and now he had witnessed the full extent of her talent. The audience's response reinforced the reality of her achievement, showing that her performance had left a lasting impact on everyone present. As the evening continued, the restaurant was filled with conversation, but now it revolved around her performance. People shared their amazement, replayed the experience in their minds, and expressed admiration for the young woman who had transformed a moment of potential embarrassment into a remarkable display of talent. She moved through the room with quiet confidence, acknowledging the smiles and praise, feeling a sense of validation and respect that she had never experienced before. For the waitress, this moment was more than just a performance. It was a turning point, a demonstration of courage, skill, and self-expression that had changed how she was seen by others and how she saw herself. She had faced fear and pressure, and had shown that talent combined with bravery could overcome any challenge. The night had been transformative, leaving her with a renewed sense of purpose and a deep understanding of the power of resilience, skill, and self-belief. She had not only captivated the audience, but she had also discovered a new strength within herself, one that would guide her in the moments yet to come. The applause filled the room like a wave, wrapping around the waitress as she remained seated at the piano for a moment, taking in the energy. She had done it. What had been intended as a moment to humiliate her had transformed into something extraordinary. The audience's admiration washed over her, and for the first time in a long while, she felt completely seen, not for her role as a waitress, but for who she truly was. Slowly, she rose from the piano bench, her hands still tingling from the intensity of the performance. People approached her with wide smiles, some offering compliments, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Each word, each gesture, reinforced the reality that she had captured the hearts and minds of everyone in the room. The music had been her voice, and the response was louder than anything she could have spoken. The man who had challenged her finally approached, his posture uncertain. There was no trace of arrogance on his face now, only a mixture of surprise and reluctant respect. He had expected a spectacle of failure, but instead, he had witnessed something incredible. The waitress had turned his plan on its head, showing that talent and courage could not be manipulated or diminished. He nodded slightly, a silent acknowledgement of her skill and bravery. As the evening progressed, the audience continued to talk among themselves, replaying the performance in their minds. The atmosphere was alive with energy, filled with excitement, admiration, and the joy of witnessing something extraordinary. Some diners returned to their tables, unable to stop smiling, while others lingered near the piano, drawn by the aura of inspiration that surrounded her. The room had transformed into a space of connection, where people from different walks of life shared the experience of being moved by talent and passion. The waitress felt a mix of relief and exhilaration. The fear that had gripped her earlier had melted away, replaced by a sense of empowerment. She had faced pressure, expectation, and doubt, and had emerged triumphant. The music had carried her through the moment, turning potential humiliation into a celebration of her abilities. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. Among the staff, there was quiet admiration. They had known she was talented, but witnessing her play under such circumstances revealed a depth and strength they had never fully appreciated. They watched as her confidence radiated, her movements graceful and assured. She had transformed not just the perception of the diners, but also the perception of those who worked alongside her daily. Her performance was a reminder that quiet strength and dedication often go unnoticed until the right moment brings them into the light. The audience's response continued to grow, and some diners were recording the performance on their phones, clearly wanting to capture the memory. Others shared the story with their companions, marveling at how someone so seemingly ordinary could possess such extraordinary skill. The contrast between her humble appearance and the brilliance of her performance only amplified the impact, making the admiration feel even more genuine. The man who had initially sought to humiliate her remained nearby, observing the interactions with a careful eye. He had intended to control the situation, to assert dominance, but she had shifted the power entirely. The applause, the praise, and the undeniable talent she displayed were a testament to her resilience and ability to shine under pressure. For him, this was a lesson in humility, a reminder that assumptions based on appearances can be dangerously misleading. The waitress took a moment to move among the audience, smiling and acknowledging their praise. She felt a sense of warmth and connection that she had rarely experienced. The recognition was not superficial. It was rooted in genuine appreciation for her courage, skill, and the emotions she had conveyed through her music. The audience's admiration felt like a bridge, connecting her to people she had never met before through the universal language of music. As the night went on, the restaurant continued to buzz with excitement. People discussed the performance, replayed their favorite moments, and expressed their amazement at her ability to captivate an entire room. The atmosphere was vibrant, filled with energy and inspiration. She had not only entertained the audience, but had also left them with a sense of wonder and possibility. Her performance had become a shared memory, one that would be remembered long after the evening ended. The waitress reflected quietly on the experience. She had faced fear and pressure, yet she had risen above it. The music had been her guide, her voice, and her shield. It had allowed her to communicate with the audience in a way words never could. She realized that her talent was not just a personal gift, but a tool to inspire and connect with others. The evening had shown her the power of courage, dedication, and the willingness to step into the spotlight despite uncertainty. The man who had challenged her finally spoke, his voice low and sincere. There was no mockery, no sarcasm, only recognition. He admitted that he had underestimated her, and in doing so, he acknowledged the strength and skill that she had displayed. The audience, still buzzing with excitement, witnessed the exchange, understanding the significance of the moment. It was a quiet but powerful affirmation of her triumph over doubt and intimidation. The staff of the restaurant began to gather around, offering congratulations and sharing in the celebration. Their pride in her was evident, their smiles wide and genuine. They had witnessed a transformation, not just in the perception of the audience, but also in the confidence and presence of the waitress herself. She had stepped beyond the role she had been assigned and into her true potential, showing that talent and courage could change how the world saw her. The audience slowly began to settle, but the energy remained. Conversations were filled with admiration and excitement, and people continued to comment on the unexpected brilliance of the performance. The waitress moved through the room with quiet grace, acknowledging compliments and expressions of amazement. She felt a sense of belonging and validation that was entirely new, a recognition of her abilities and her courage in the face of pressure. For the waitress, this night would always be remembered as a turning point. She had transformed a moment of potential humiliation into a celebration of her skill and courage. The applause, admiration, and respect she received were not just external validation but also a reflection of the inner strength she had discovered within herself. She realized that true courage and talent could shine even in the most unexpected circumstances. As the evening drew to a close, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The performance had been more than just music. It had been a statement of resilience, a demonstration of the power of self-belief and dedication. She had faced fear, expectation, and doubt, and had emerged stronger and more confident. The audience had witnessed something extraordinary, and she had discovered a new understanding of her own potential. The applause continued to echo in her mind as she finally stepped away from the piano. She felt a mixture of relief, pride, and exhilaration. The night had been transformative, a moment that had changed how she was seen and how she saw herself. The performance had proven that talent, courage, and determination could overcome any challenge, and she carried that realization with her as she moved forward, ready for whatever opportunities and experiences awaited her next. The restaurant was slowly returning to its normal rhythm, but the excitement from the performance still hung in the air. People whispered to each other about what they had just witnessed, replaying moments in their minds, amazed at the courage and skill of the waitress. The piano, once a piece of furniture in the corner, now seemed like a monument to the talent she had revealed that night. The waitress sat quietly for a moment, letting herself breathe and reflect. She had faced fear and pressure, and she had transformed a moment meant for humiliation into something extraordinary. The applause, the admiration, and the respect from the audience had shown her that courage and talent could shine even when the odds seemed stacked against her. It was a realization that left her with a mixture of relief, pride, and an almost overwhelming sense of possibility. People began to approach her more openly now, some offering compliments, others asking questions about how long she had been playing. The recognition felt almost surreal. For years, her talent had been a private part of her life, a secret that she had kept hidden while focusing on her daily responsibilities. But tonight, it had come alive in a way that could not be ignored. The audience saw her not as a waitress or an ordinary person, but as an artist, a musician capable of moving hearts with her hands and her music. The man who had initially sought to humiliate her approached once more, this time with genuine respect. His earlier arrogance had vanished, replaced by the realization that he had underestimated her completely. He did not mock, did not challenge, but simply nodded and spoke quietly, acknowledging the talent he had witnessed. The audience watched the interaction, understanding the significance of this moment of humility and recognition. It was a quiet but meaningful affirmation of her victory. As the evening wore on, the energy in the restaurant remained high. Guests continued to talk excitedly about the performance, sharing their amazement and admiration. The staff, too, expressed pride and support, recognizing that something remarkable had occurred before their eyes. The atmosphere had shifted completely from one of expectation and skepticism to one of respect and celebration. Everyone present felt that they had witnessed a unique and unforgettable event. The waitress moved among the audience, quietly accepting compliments and acknowledging the admiration. She felt a deep sense of connection to the people around her, a realization that her music had the power to touch others in ways words could not. Each interaction reinforced the impact of her performance, showing her that the courage to step forward and share her gift had created something meaningful and lasting. She thought about the journey that had led her to this moment. The countless hours of practice, the private sessions of learning and refining her skills, all the moments when she doubted herself, all of it had prepared her for this night. What had started as a challenge from someone who wanted to belittle her had turned into a defining moment, a turning point that would shape the rest of her life. She understood now that talent alone was not enough. It was courage, perseverance, and the willingness to act despite fear that truly made a difference. The audience continued to linger, some taking photos, others simply soaking in the atmosphere. The energy of admiration and inspiration filled the room, creating a sense of unity among strangers who had shared a remarkable experience. It was more than just a performance. It was a moment that had connected people through the beauty of music and the power of human courage. The waitress could feel the effect of her actions, the invisible thread that linked her to each listener, and it was a feeling she had never experienced before. The man who had challenged her now observed quietly, realizing that his actions had inadvertently set the stage for her to shine. He had tried to control the situation, but she had taken charge in a way that was undeniable. His initial intention to humiliate her had failed completely, and instead, he had become a witness to her triumph, a lesson in humility and the consequences of underestimating others. As the evening progressed, the waitress began to reflect on what this night meant for her future. She realized that her life had changed, that she could no longer hide her talent. The courage she had shown and the recognition she had received had opened doors that she had never considered. She understood that she had a choice, to continue as before or to embrace the opportunities that had been presented by her unexpected performance. The decision felt empowering, a chance to step fully into her potential. The applause and admiration continued, and she allowed herself a small, genuine smile. She had faced fear, expectation, and doubt, and she had emerged stronger and more confident. Her talent had been revealed not for superficial praise, but as a testament to her dedication, courage, and resilience. The experience had reinforced her belief in the importance of stepping forward, even when the outcome was uncertain, and trusting in her own abilities. Audience members began to leave, still talking animatedly about the performance, their excitement evident in their voices and expressions. The energy that lingered in the restaurant was a reflection of the impact she had made, the way her music had touched hearts and inspired admiration. She moved through the remaining guests with quiet grace, acknowledging their words and smiles, feeling a sense of fulfillment that went beyond any applause or recognition. The staff gathered around, offering congratulations and sharing their amazement. They had seen her talent, but witnessing it under pressure, in front of a live audience, had revealed a depth and strength they had never fully appreciated. Their pride was palpable, and the waitress felt a deep sense of belonging and support. She realized that her courage and skill had not only impacted the audience, but had also inspired those around her to recognize and appreciate her true potential. As the night drew to a close, she took a final moment at the piano, running her fingers lightly over the keys. The instrument had been her companion, her voice, and her bridge to the audience. It had allowed her to express herself fully, to communicate emotions and stories that words could never capture. She understood now that music was more than a hobby or a talent. It was a part of her identity, a means of connection, and a source of strength. She reflected on the journey that had brought her here, from private practice sessions to the moment of performance under pressure. Every challenge, every doubt, every hour of preparation had contributed to this transformative experience. She realized that the courage to step forward, even when uncertain, could lead to unexpected and profound outcomes. The night had been a testament to resilience, skill, and the power of embracing one's true abilities. The man who had challenged her finally departed, leaving a quiet acknowledgement of her talent. The audience continued to discuss the performance, sharing their admiration and excitement. The waitress moved among the remaining guests, accepting compliments and enjoying the sense of connection that had been created. She felt a deep sense of pride, not just in her skill, but in the way she had faced fear and uncertainty with grace and confidence. For the waitress, this night marked a turning point. She had transformed a moment of potential humiliation into a celebration of her talent and courage. The experience had shown her that stepping into the spotlight, embracing her abilities, and trusting in herself could create meaningful and lasting impact. She had inspired others, gained recognition, and, most importantly, discovered a new understanding of her own potential. As she finally stepped away from the piano and prepared to leave the restaurant, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The night had been transformative, leaving her with memories, connections, and a renewed belief in her own abilities. She knew that the courage and skill she had displayed would guide her in the moments yet to come, opening doors and creating opportunities that she had never imagined. The experience had shown her that true talent and bravery cannot be hidden, that even in the face of doubt and intimidation, one can rise to the occasion and create something extraordinary. The applause, admiration, and respect she had received were a reflection of her dedication, resilience, and willingness to embrace the challenge. She walked away from the piano that night changed, confident, and ready to face whatever lay ahead, carrying with her the knowledge that her music, courage, and spirit could leave a lasting impression on the world.